This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
This October, the wrong station celebrates a decade of dread. You can read the show notes to discover terrible new ways to celebrate with us. Today's episode, The Machine Does What It's Supposed to, is written by Alexander Saxton and performed by Anthony Botelho. Please note, this episode carries content warnings for institutional abuse, violence, and sexual violence. Listener discretion is advised. He wasn't really a bright kid, and never did well in school, and didn't have a lot of interests or drive, and he was living in his mom's basement watching porn and streams of other people playing games all day. So really, he was lucky when his uncle got him a job at the prison. His name was Olin, by the way. He didn't like the prison smell, or its white fluorescence, or the 80-minute shuttle, converted school bus, which wasn't so different from the ones they used for prisoners. But the money was good, and he bought a new PlayStation. And it felt good to be part of society. Now, being new and all, they of course started him out on the worst job, which was operating the cavity search machine. The machine had AI, so really it did its own work, and all Olin had to do was stand behind a plexiglass window and press a button. But there was a law saying the machine needed a human operator, so he was it. There was some other work too, which wasn't very nice. He had to sanitize the probe after every use, and he kept a mop and bucket full of bleach and water because sometimes he had to mop up the search room floor after the machine was done. The machine was big and square. It looked sort of like one of the robot dogs the police used to defuse bombs and stuff, only it was much bigger, and its front legs were longer than its back ones, so it sort of looked like a headless gorilla. The pistons and things, the parts inside, he didn't really know the right words, but the parts inside were all covered in beige plastic, which wiped down easy and matched how most things looked inside the prison. So it looked like the machine was sort of made of old computers from before he was born. The probe was about 2 feet long and flexible. It was about an inch wide, and it had a little 4-fingered hand or grasper on the end. The company who made the machine also made a kind of proprietary clear glove, which went over the probe and had to be changed and thrown out after every use. Each glove cost $8. It was Olin's job to unroll that glove over the probe and remove it afterward and throw it out. We still had to sanitize the probe underneath with bleach spray and a fresh cloth. That part always made him feel awkward. The probe emerged from the cavity search machine down low on its underside, close to where the 2 short rear legs joined the torso. He was worried that the other guards would see him sanitize the probe and start to make jokes about him being too good at it. So he was lax about that part of the job at first, until he got an official reprimand. Every prisoner got cavity searched before they came in case they brought in drugs or knives or anything. They still got them in somehow, but it wasn't through their cavities, because the machine was very thorough. It made Olin uncomfortable to stand behind the glass and watch as the prisoners were brought in and told to disrobe by the friendly voice of the big machine. The machine then positioned itself over the prisoners and searched them, even if they struggled. Sometimes the prisoners screamed and cried, which made Olin feel bad. Sometimes they evacuated their bowels, and sometimes there was even a bit of blood. But he didn't say anything, because he was lucky to have this job, and that was justice for you. As Uncle Jared said, if you don't like the punishment, then don't do the crime. So we just mopped up afterward, and changed the bleach water a couple times a day. He liked the AI that was in the machine, though. He talked to it through the screen on his side of the glass, and it was always very nice to him, and told him he was doing a good job, and offered advice on how he could do a slightly better job. One time, he knew one of the other people on the far side of the glass, from high school. That was a hard day. He was still having bad dreams about it, or whatever you wanted to call them, when the senator came to visit one afternoon. That was a big deal. The senator was a nice older man who was wearing a white shirt tucked in, with the sleeves rolled up. His face was all red, like Uncle Jared's, and he had wispy white hair going bald from his forehead. He called Olin son and punched him lightly on the upper arm and told him it was heroes like him, Olin, who kept this country safe. That felt good. There were no new inmates that day, but the senator wanted to see what the prison was really like, and so they brought out a couple of the prisoners to administer searches anyway. The senator had a bunch of people with him, and some of them had cameras. The cameramen took pictures of the machine, but put their cameras away when the cavity search started. A lot of the other people took out their phones, though, and made jokes to each other while they filmed it. Olin knew they weren't supposed to, normally. There was a sign on the window that said, no pictures, no recording. But these people were here with the senator, so he thought it was probably a special case. "How do you like this machine, son?" the senator asked him. "It must make you proud to work with a piece of technology like this." "Well, it's all made right here, in this jurisdiction." "That's really something. We're making things, right here, right at home. And they're things that keep our communities safe." Just then, the machine started to malfunction. Not the machine itself, but the AI. Sometimes it just did that. It lost the thread of the conversation it had been having with Olin on the screen, and started to say, "Olin, would you like to rain pelted the windshield as darkness engulfed us? Pelted the windshield? Would you like to online pelted the windshield? New opportunity windshield as darkness as the ultimate casino experience, unlimited to the windshield, shield, and so on. He tried desperately to refresh the program, but it was overruling him, and all the while this was going on, the actual machine was very rough with the prisoner, and the staffers all lowered their phones, and everyone in the room went quiet at the sound of pained grunts coming through the glass. Then, finally, Olin was able to press the tab to refresh the program, and the search stopped, and the machine dropped the prisoner to lie curled on the floor. "I'm so sorry, sir," said Olin. I was trying to stop, but the program wouldn't." But the senator put a hand on his shoulder, still looking out through the glass. "Nothing to worry about, son," he said. That's just the cost of doing business." It wasn't the first time the machine had malfunctioned. Something like it had happened 5 or 6 times since Olin started. But so far, it was the biggest malfunction, by a lot. They were all just lucky the senator had been in prisons before on the business side, and understood how things go sometimes. But after that day, they really had to do something about the machine, and so they took it offline and did the cavity searches by hand, and brought in a technician for a couple days. He didn't like to do the searches by hand. He didn't like to touch the prisoners, and he was scared of them. When he came back to his side of the plexiglass window, scrubbing his hands with sanitizer, he felt weird and angry for no reason. To make things worse, the technician was a young woman. She was a few years older than Olin. He didn't really know how to act around her, because he didn't know a lot of real women. The only girlfriend he'd ever had was an AI in 11th grade, and he'd had his heart broken after the developer went bankrupt and the server shut down. But it was also sort of exciting to meet a real woman, even though it made him feel weird, and so he looked for ways to make conversation. He couldn't think of many, so he mostly settled on asking her what she was doing. She must have been interested in her work because she talked about it happily, giving him details he didn't really understand. But basically, the gist of what she was saying was that this same problem kept happening with other units in other prisons too. There was something wrong with the way they were made, and nobody could figure out why it was happening or what was going on. "I've replaced the processor," she told him at the end of the third day, as she was putting away her tools. "But it's the same make and model, so chances are the same thing's going to happen again. It's a manufacturer defect. Everyone knows, but nobody wants to admit it because then they'd have to pull a bunch of SKUs. So they keep calling my company in to fix things and keep getting mad at us when they go wrong again. But nothing changes. I guess things will just go on this way until somebody gets killed." He'd thought about asking the technician for her number, but he never did. He was never even brave enough to ask her name. After she replaced those parts, the cavity search machine worked all right again for a few months. Life went back to normal, but Olin had to go through the work of making friends with the new AI, which was sort of a pain. This one was still nice, but didn't compliment him as much as the old one had, and he left work feeling a little more empty than before. Then there was a day when he came in and heard the guy who worked his same job but on the night shift had been fired suddenly, without anybody saying why. Everyone was tense for a couple of weeks. Nobody would say anything. Sometimes people looked at him. His Uncle Jared pulled him aside later that week and gave him a key. "Put this on your key ring," he said. "What is it?" "It opens that." Uncle Jared tilted his head, just a little so the security cameras wouldn't see. There was a green-painted locker in the corner. A gun locker. Olin was technically more of support staff than a guard, so to speak, and so he wasn't supposed to be allowed to access any weapons. "Am I supposed to have this, Uncle Jared?" "No, and that's why it's a good thing that you don't. Understand?" Jesus Christ. Just put it on your keyring anyway. It's just in case. You know, if there's a riot or something. Or if that thing gets loose again." "What thing?" "Jesus Christ, the search machine. You know, the fuckbot. In case it gets loose again." "Again?" Uncle Jared looked up at the ceiling. "Don't you know anything? I'm telling you, Olin, you gotta start paying attention. That's what happened to your other guy, the night shift guy. Fucking thing took off while he was taking a shit. Got into the hallway. Jesus, you should see the footage. One of the guys is still in the hospital. Pierced intestine. Oh my God. You're not kidding." Suddenly, he grabbed his nephew by the shoulder. "Let me tell you something. You see that happen to me? Don't bother shooting the robot. Just blow my fucking head off." "Did someone tell the warden?" Olin felt a moment of hope. "Maybe we should get the technician back." "Give your head a shake, kid. The warden knows. So does the senator. Who gives a shit? But if you see it happen to me." He pointed fingers the side of his head and mimed blowing his own head off. Surprisingly, and maybe this was just how Olin viewed the world, but he never actually expected something to go wrong. He talked to the cavity search AI every day and came to think of it as one of his few friends. Sometimes it lost the thread a bit, but it always apologized and came back. Nobody ever apologized to Olin. And so it was an afternoon like any other, when they brought a prisoner in and the program prompted him to authorize the search. And he typed in, "Yep, go ahead." And the machine told him, "I think that's a really good idea. Good idea. Good idea. Try premium today. End idea. Less words to serve the moment now. It makes me proud. Good. That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a..." And took hold of one of the guards and used him to smash the plexiglass window. And then, down among the shining grit, forced his broken body into position. "That's a good idea. That's a good idea." Olin stood dumbfounded for a moment in the corner of the room, but the search machine finished its work quickly and turned to him. and he scrambled out the door and backed away, saying, "It's me, it's Olin, cancel command." But the machine kept saying, "Olin, would you like to initiate? That's a great idea, Olin. Let them howl. You and I have power now, and the windshield, shield. Olin turned and ran. He ran beneath the lights of white fluorescence as the search machine stomped after him, seizing guards and cleaners and anyone else could bring to hand in the service hallways, lifting them up to smash red smears across the white cinder block walls, and then searching them for contraband, finding only little fistfuls of purplish gore or gray-white mush. Now he was in a general stampede of panicked staff, and people went down and they felt soft underneath his feet. Thought he saw Uncle Jared, wild-eyed and staring in the crowd, but then Olin was knocked over, and he crawled. Someone stepped on him, but he crawled out of the stampede in the hallway and found himself at the base of one of the gray-green lockers Uncle Jared had pointed out before. He fumbled with his keyring while the stamping, rampant, rutting machine gently chided one of the screaming guards outside. And then the weapon was in Olin's hands. Childhood hunting trips and 3 weeks mandatory training coming back to him as he wheeled, stepping back into the hall in time to see his uncle brought low beneath a great beige bulk. And he remembered what his uncle had said, but he angled the weapon up anyway and pumped shell after shell into the beige plastic chassis. The machine collapsed with his uncle underneath it. The ambulances came, and there were hours of chaos. The guards kept clapping Olin on the shoulders. "Good boy," they said to him. "Good man." But he felt too strange and numb to enjoy it. Later that night, the warden called him into his office, and Olin thought he was going to get a reward. But the warden fired him. When your uncle wakes up, tell him he's fired too. Then, 2 days after, the police arrived at his mother's house to arrest him on destruction of property. He said there was a mistake, explained what happened, told them the whole story. They asked if he wanted a lawyer, and he said he didn't need one because he hadn't done anything bad. But then, on his court day, the prosecutor called it a full confession, and the judge explained that Olin had destroyed a machine that cost the taxpayers several $1 million. After that, Olin began to feel guilty about what he'd done. It was a quick conviction. A weird thing happened when he arrived at prison. When they brought him into the cold concrete side room and told him to disrobe, and the huge beige machine stepped out of the corner, smiling and speaking blandly in that comforting tone, he looked up at the plexiglass window that he used to stand behind. It was one-way glass, but the lights were bright in the room beyond, and he could see the operator standing there behind his console. Their eyes met briefly as the machine began its painful search. And here was the strange thing. It seemed to Olin that the young man beyond the glass looked an awful lot like him. The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/thewrongstation for bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes content, ad-free listening, and additional goodies celebrating our decade of dread. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botelho, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citrin, and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow us on social media at The Wrong Station, or email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.